Joining us for more on the Siesta Key wastewater treatment plant and water quality is Tom Higginbotham, the Environmental Health Director for the Florida Department of Health in Sarasota, Dave Cash, Sarasota County Public Utility Division Manager, and Marcus Lindeman, a professor of marine biology at State College of Florida. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. And Dave, I guess the first question that we would ask is, when Hermine hit, was the dumping of this water avoidable in any way?
Well, it was not. The system, due to the rainfall that day, was record rainfall for daily rainfall for the month of August. And we felt it necessary to implement that procedure. The plant is designed to do that, and that is our protective measure to avoid a spill or avoid a plant upset.
What would have been the difference if there was a spill within the plant?
Well, if we had not implemented that procedure, the potential for raw sewage to spill over the walls into the facility grounds and possibly into the neighborhoods would have been likely, and as well as causing a plant upset.
Obviously, the residents who spoke in Rick's story are distressed, and that's an understatement, and they see the effects of the spill in their neighborhoods, in their lagoons, and so forth. From a Department of Health point of view, what was the risk to local residents from the sewage spill?
Well, whenever you have a large amount of sewage go into a water body, there certainly is an immediate health risk to anybody who could be exposed to it, especially if they were to ingest that water or if they had any cuts or sores on their skin, the risk infection or a rash at a minimum.
Right. And Marcus, in terms of marine life and wildlife and marine life, what are the risks to animals in the lagoon and going out towards the water?
Well, one of the things we have to think about, of course, is the amount of bacteria that can thrive on the raw sewage, coliform bacteria that are generally monitored. Then there's toxins in the sewage itself. One of the things that we are only currently just beginning to be aware of is the fact that we have a lot of things in our sewage right now that we didn't have 10, 15 years ago. Pharmaceutical sewage, there's a lot of stuff going in. We have no idea what the effects might be on the wildlife. And, I mean,
short-term or long-term?
Both. There are no studies on this. I mean, there's studies being conducted as we speak, but the results are not in yet because this is a completely new field. There's even new studies on how waste treatment plants, new waste treatment plants will be able to deal with this new kind of pollution that we never had to deal with before in such huge amounts.
Okay. David, in Rick's story, you say that the water quality is going back to normal in the lagoons out there. How does it recover that quickly?
Well, in referring to the effluent water quality, the finished water from that facility, the treated water, is discharged into that canal on a normal basis. And that water quality has returned back to normal, and the plant is operating normally.
Is there any testing to the surrounding lagoons, the canals, the properties to see what are remnants of the sewage spill and whether it causes a continual health impact to local residents?
Well, the Florida Healthy Beaches program monitors water quality right along the beaches where people normally go to swim and recreate. And we do that weekly here in Sarasota County. We did see elevated levels of bacteria earlier in September, later part of August. Of course, it wasn't just the sewer plant. We have a lot of stormwater runoff, which can contribute to that. Enterococci bacteria is what we test for, and that is found normally in the environment and in animals and humans.
Right, there's so much more to talk about it, but we'll have to return to our roundtable in just a moment. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we are discussing wastewater releases and how they impact our environment, and our guests are Tom Higginbotham, the Environmental Health Director for the Florida Department of Health in Sarasota, Dave Cash, Sarasota County Public Utilities Division Manager, and Marcus Lindeman, Professor of Marine Biology of the State College of Florida. I didn't mean to promote you to president. I don't know why you would want the job, but you know, obviously local residents are upset that this plant is still even in operation.
Right.
Tell us about the delay in terms of decommissioning this plant and what is going to replace the capacity?
Okay. Well, the county spent decades consolidating the privately owned utility systems and removing these types of facilities from service. And this isn't unique. The county acquired it in 2006. It is a surface discharge facility, as we've discussed. And about 2010, 2011, the decision was made to decommission it for a variety of reasons. Proximity to homeowners, the fact that it is a surface discharge facility, and its age. So a lot of projects were developed to be able to do that, including miles and miles of new pipe, a new master pump station at the facility, as well as expansions of other regional facilities that will accept this flow ultimately. So getting those projects completed is going on now, and it has been delayed due to the fact that we're expanding facilities and we have to get those expansions completed first. We've also added a water line to the project.
Right. Yeah, so when residents like the one in Rick's package say, we want a red alert, we want this done yesterday, is there anything in this process that could be speeded up?
At this point, we are actively constructing 2 regional facilities. We're installing a pipe under Sarasota Bay, and we've just awarded a contract to construct the pump station that will replace the plant. So we're doing everything we possibly can at this point to decommission that facility.
Now, Marcus, you know there's a lot of speculation, whether it's scientific or not scientific, out there about the links between sewage dumps like this and the problems that we're having with red tide. The State Department of Health says the two are not linked. For the people watching this, is there any scientific evidence otherwise?
It's a big problem because it doesn't even matter if it's a sewage spill or another what we call point source. To try and link a discharge from any single point source to a large algal bloom. Because usually what the algal blooms respond to is any sort of nutrient matter that enters the water, that allows it to grow basically out of leaps and bounds. When Hermine hit, we not only had the sewage discharge, we also had, as was mentioned before, record rain levels. This means that on top of the sewage spill, there was a ton of runoff carrying a lot of nutrients, any sort of fertilizer that's been used, private lawns, golf courses, you name it. All of these add to the nutrient load in the water. So to say that a single discharge is the single cause for an outbreak of a red tide bloom, that's impossible to say, and it's impossible to validate.
But it doesn't help.
It does not help, no. But then again, with record rain levels that we've had, these things do happen, and they are regrettable, and they are a hazard, but they do happen.
Tom, how do you determine whether the waters, whether it's in the lagoon or on the beaches, is safe to swim in?
Well, we don't check the water in the lagoons. When the Department of Health decides which areas to test, we look at where the greatest population of people would be exposed to that water, and that would be along our beaches. And so weekly, again, we go out and we test for Enterococcus bacteria. And depending on those levels, if it's anything over 71 colony-forming units per 100 milliliters, then we know that the levels could be unsafe for people to be exposed to.
Obviously, we have another hurricane that's bearing down on Florida. We do not know at this point how it's going to impact the Suncoast, but is there anything that can be done before a storm like that hits to mitigate what might happen in terms of the capacity of the plant?
Well, it's difficult to do that because the amount of rainfall is unknown. It's that sudden inflow into the system that creates the problems. Facilities that are newer can handle those types of flows more effectively. This facility was designed to be able to do what we had to do during Hurricane Hermine as a protective measure for preventing an actual spill. So at this point, we monitor, we do everything we can to manage the collection system through the event to make sure everything's pumping and we're not spilling out in the system. But it is difficult because it really depends on the severity of the rainfall.
What capacity does newer facilities have in terms of mitigating these kinds of leaks?
Right. Well, in our case, we have 3 regional facilities that we are actively expanding, and they have much more storage capacity, and they produce reclaimed water. So we have the ability to distribute that reclaimed water to various storage ponds. Customers that use that reclaimed water, they have ponds as well, and we also have deep injection wells to inject that fully treated water. So our ability on the mainland is much greater, and that's why moving the flow from this plant will help.
Tom, does the State Department of Health test whether or not there is a release from wastewater plants after a storm like this for all the reasons that Marcus talked about?
Well, the utilities usually inform us when there's been a spill, and we work with them to test areas that were directly impacted by that spill. But the authority comes from the Department of Environmental Protection. They're the regulatory authority over sewer systems like that. So we do work with utilities to check to see what the levels could be and if they're attenuating or dropping off over time.
And Marcus, again, we're coming at a period of time when the fish kills on local beaches have been awful and not helpful to not only local residents but local businesses. Do you see anything changing in the near term? Are we getting past red tide? Where does that stand right now?
Sadly, I don't think that for the near future we are going to be rid of red tide. And red tide is not the only toxic algal bloom that can happen. It is, we have this problem of large nutrient loads on the ground. We have a lot of private developments, we have a lot of public developments that require a lot of nutrients, nitrates, phosphates, your general kinds of fertilizers. And we also live in a subtropical environment where severe storms with heavy rainfalls do occur. Red tide has, the first time it was documented was actually in the 1530s by De Soto's mission. But what we do know is, at least as we have monitored, the larger and the more human development occurs within the Florida Bay, the greater the frequency of red tide becomes. Because as we create sewage, as we create fertilizer, we just put more nutrients in the water.
We have less than a minute left, but it does raise the question about whether the sustainability of growth of our local areas, because there are more people living down here producing more natural nutrients and also putting pressure on you in terms of the capacity to handle wastewater like these plants. Welcome back. We are discussing the water treatment facility on Siesta Key and what wastewater releases mean for our environment. Our panel joins us now for final thoughts. David, what can you tell local residents who hear Bob's weather forecast, see another storm bearing down on this in terms of preventing this from happening again?
It is difficult with another storm looming and the risk of it happening again. And unfortunately, we cannot guarantee that it won't happen again. But we are making sure that we tell residents that we're investing heavily to remove this facility as soon as possible, and investing at this point $30 million to do so. And it is our priority project, and if it does happen again, we will be communicating widely and effectively if this occurrence should present itself during the storm.
This facility is scheduled to be shut down by the end of 2017?
It is,
okay.
Yes.
And Tom, is the Department of Health ready out there, should these things happen again, to go out there and to ensure local residents that their water is safe or not safe?
Absolutely. We're fortunate to have a very close working relationship with our county government here and our municipalities. And when these kinds of things happen, we communicate with them to let people know of the risk, if there is a risk, and when that risk has been abated.
And Marcus, I mean, it was news to me that this phenomenon in terms of red tide goes back to the 1500s, but are there any studies out there showing that maybe ways forward in terms of dealing with this, because it seems to be happening around here more and more often?
Well, there are studies that are currently being done on trying to find ways to mitigate red tide. There's a number of studies being conducted right now using natural clay, which will attach to the organisms and basically cause them to sink to the bottom and die. Right now, they're also having studies trying to figure out if this clay would then impact other organisms that our fishing industry and our shellfish industry also requires, because clay is a particulate substance that is very fine and might get caught in the gills. But these studies are on their way, and there's some high hopes there.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. But before we go, we want to share some of our viewers' thoughts about last night's show. Last week, a Confederate flag was brought to Manatee High School, and it has sparked a series of Black Lives Matters protests across Manatee. We had the chance to speak with some of the organizers last night, and here's what you had to say. Melissa Long-Lodi writes, "So proud of these amazing and empowered students for taking a stand. You matter." Donna Farina Salustri writes, "This is the South. A flag can't hurt you. Maybe learn what it stands for." And Dayton Strickland writes, "You want to get under the skin of either side, ignore them. They want the publicity." Well, if you'd like to join the conversation about tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/news@7. I want to thank our guests for being here this evening. Tom Higginbotham is the Environmental Health Director for the Florida Department of Health in Sarasota. Dave Cash is Sarasota County Public Utilities Division Manager. And Marcus Lindeman is a professor of marine biology at the State College of Florida.